Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Photographic Memory Podcast. And I'm excited to welcome the program Dr. Shannon Panzo. Dr. Shannon, how are you doing?
Hey, as always, I'm doing great.
Yes, you're always doing great because of, again, the Zux Pro method and how you live your life and how you are able to live fancy free at times because of certain of your abilities and what you've learned in this method. And it's fantastic. You're not just photographic memory, mental photography expert. You're also a brain management expert, which we kind of delved into last episode. And lastly, mentoring, which we even talked a little bit about mentoring on the last program. So today, we're going to switch the tables around and look at. I'm a traditional educator, certified elementary education. I've taught high school, elementary school, young kids, how we instruct kids that in school, and how the Zux Pro method shows a totally different way. Because what I was seeing on one of your videos, and we'll start out with that question, I was seeing in one of the videos that you can instruct kids in the Zux Pro method at a young age. It's not, doesn't have to start at, like 12 or 13. It can start earlier.
Well, the eidetic memory basically is starting at the time of birth. So you already have that. That's already in place. That's automatic. And you're going to be using that the first 5 years of your life. And during that first 5 years of your life, look, Neil, you have children.
Right.
Whenever you're looking at your children in that first 5 years of life, how do they reflect on you? Are they like little geniuses?
They're sponges. Yes, little geniuses, sponges. Yes.
Information sponges, geniuses. They seem to know it all. They're tiny little adults packed into a tiny little body. But at the same time, they're brilliant in their own way. They're absolutely brilliant. And then something happens. They're tossed into the school system, and it all changes. From your experience, what is that like?
Oh, it's just, the system starts out where we're going to go and teach everyone a same method of a left to right to learn to read. First, by identifying letters and sounds, and from letters and sounds, going to reading and learning to read after certain phonemic awareness is taught and different things. That's how you teach kids to read and count the same thing. It's basically a rote memorization process, teaching them till they start to memorize, not even memorize, but understand the patterns in numbers and the sounds in words.
Okay. So what has changed here is you have the ultimate learning skill called the eidetic memory, which you've learned the most difficult things in life. You can even learn multiple languages without having any accent. And I mean, these are things that adults find very challenging. And we could all learn those things incredibly well in those first 5 years of life before we went to school. Then, as you've outlined there, you then hand the child, you say, okay, well, we're going to teach you a system that is actually better to learn by. Now, this is the claim,
Right.
better to learn by than your own natural methodology of learning. But in order to do this, we got to slow you down to a snail's pace. We got to teach you in a very pedantic manner and slow you down and basically cripple you so that you get away from using your natural abilities. And this is what they're doing to all of the children that go through this system, is they slow them down to such a, a dogged pace that we actually hinder the learning process.
Right.
There's actually a National Education Association statistic chart, and this has been around forever and ever. Everybody knows about it. And essentially, for the first 5 years of your life, you learn at an incredible speed. When you start going to school and you start learning reading, that basically it doesn't even level off. It just goes down from that point on. Your rate of learning just plummets. And it stays that way for the rest of your life until you change it. The only way you can change it is reassociate yourself with your natural function, the photographic memory. You already have it. You just have to reassociate with it. Now, when it comes to children, uh, what we take a look at, which is really interesting, is dyslexics. Now,
Right.
a quarter of our population is dyslexic. There's 7 different types of dyslexia. They come in all different fashions, all different degrees. You can have multiple dyslexias within the same person. And all these things do is inhibit our ability to read. But do they
Right.
actually
Exactly.
inhibit our ability to use the eidetic memory, the photographic memory, or mental photography? No. Mental photography bypasses dyslexia. It enables a person to take in whole pages of information as pictures,
Right.
and then the mind can automatically disseminate out the information without having these interruptions. Now, there's a gentleman. He's a professor over in England. His name is Professor Stein, and he's been studying dyslexia for years and years, back even in the late
Right.
80s. He has all the statistics. He has all the data that says specifically that the dyslexic process is more like a stutter. So if you can
Right.
actually if you can actually implant the information between the stutters, the person gets the information because
Correct.
it's not interrupted. Well, guess what? That's what mental photography does. It gives you a complete flash of information every page that you turn. That's why this is so much more effective than anything else in dealing with dyslexia. We look at dyslexic people as being brilliant in their own right.
Right.
They are prepared to use the photographic memory. They're prepared to use mental photography, and that's been taken away from them. And in many cases, they are demoralized because, oh, they have a deficit of learning. No, they don't.
Right. Okay. So, and that's the thing that happens is dyslexia and the number of kids that can't read or adults that cannot read in the United States is just alarming. And it's because pretty much you're saying the method that is taught limits the ability of many people to be successful because they lose the eidetic memory through our education system.
Well, they don't lose it.
But
They
it
just
disappears.
lose
It's not need
contact
to be
with it.
it needs to be brought back again, meaning many people will just kind of is no longer able to be used then, right?
Right. So it can be used, but it takes specialized training. And look, if you talk to various organizations that deal specific with dyslexia, there's all kind of expensive equipment. There's all kind of expensive techniques that will help a person, but almost all of these techniques are based on reading and not them utilizing the photographic memory or the eidetic memory.
Exactly.
So,
All right. Yeah. So it's
so
like,
that's their
yeah.
technique, is to reinvent reading so that a dyslexic person can get something out of it.
So this Sucks Pro method is so powerful that it needs to get out everywhere so that the people that are diagnosed with dyslexia can use this method to improve their reading or their ability to understand things and to be able to be fine even though they have dyslexia.
Ultimately, this is how it works. And I have a client that really spelled it out. Her her problem with dyslexia was so severe and she was so phobic, she couldn't keep a job. She was really good at getting jobs and escalating up in jobs. As soon as she got a job escalated up to the point where she had to start reading, she would leave because she could no longer cope with reading. Reading to her was like walking on broken glass. It was very painful for her. And so
Right.
she totally went away from reading. This is a godsend because she could then uh, She ended up having more library cards than I did. She would go into the library and photograph all the books that she needed, and then she
Wow.
could go and do whatever she needed to do because this was their new way to get information. Now, granted, not all dyslexics have a problem to that
Right.
degree. Most dyslexics go undiagnosed or they're misdiagnosed, which is even worse. The misdiagnosis of a dyslexic person usually makes them fall into a ADD category. Now, if you have a person that is dyslexic and they have this stutter effect going on uh, in their brain, what happens when you give them amphetamines
It's going to make the
like
brain
Ritalin?
worse. It's going to make it
It
worse.
makes it worse. So if you treat a dyslexic as ADD
It's a
and you give
problem.
them Ritalin, which is an amphetamine, it actually increases the rate of the stuttering, uh, which makes the dyslexia even uh, just worse, a lot worse. So diagnosis is critical for dyslexics. And a lot of the school systems still today are not willing and ready to diagnose dyslexics as separate.
So that's
So
perfect.
we,
Yeah, that's definitely perfect. So let's kind of, so what do the educators say? Now, how do you break into the education community where there's some people that say to you, Dr. Shannon, really? Well, why don't we teach this method then?
it literally comes down to bureaucracy. Let's say, okay, Neil, you've taught many classes. That's
Right.
great. What if you are tossed into teaching a class of children that are nothing but genius? The entire class are geniuses. They are going to challenge the heck out of you.
Correct.
This is what the school system doesn't want. They don't want free thinkers. They don't want geniuses. The geniuses can be stacked over in the corner in some special class, and the rest of the people are taught to be dumbed down.
Definitely. Correct. Correct.
And you see this in the bureaucracy of the school system and how it's arranged and how it's all put together. This is very unfortunate because it doesn't allow people to really accelerate themselves in the ways that they need to do. So yes, this is dumbing down of the nations, dumbing down of the school systems, things like this. It all comes down to bureaucracy. A uh, a dumb populace is much easier to control than a smart populace.
Correct.
And
That's yeah.
that's the hinge point.
Okay. So how can people that have kids that are struggling in school contact you today so that they can try the Zux Pro method?
Well, the easiest way is go to zoxpro.com. They can get it there. If you have a child that is absolutely terrible at reading, well, you pick it up for yourself and then you help that child in understanding what they need to do to get the grasp of what this is all about. And yes, you're taking on or you're taking on the instructor portion of you teaching it to your child at that point to make sure that they're doing the exercises, to make sure that they're doing it right. And if you do it that way, you're in great shape. If you don't, well, if you leave it up to the child is still locked into that defeatist way of looking at things. They may not actually do what it takes to get to the next level.
All right, Zuxpro.com for more information. Appreciate it, Dr. Shannon. And that's the kind of stuff we'll have in the conversations. We continue to look at other things as well and hear what the mainstream education system looks at by dealing with study skills next. Because study skills, we talked about reading. I guess we'll go into study skills next.
Okay. So that's okay. So study skills.
That's what we'll talk about next program.
Oh, that's the
Next,
next
next
program. Okay,
get them excited.
that's
So everybody
fine.
check out Dr. Shannon. It was a great photographic memory podcast, guys, and take care.